And
No, I don't want it. Let's pause it.
Thanks, Peta. For everybody out there, we have to thank Peta and her team. They're the ones that put this together, do all the invitations, put together the graphics and all that kind of thing, and they do a great job. So thanks, Peta and your team. How the heck did that hack happen? True stories from the trenches. As Peta said, a lot of times these cyber incidents, we read about them on the web, but they seem kind of abstract. But today we're going to talk about a couple of hacks that actually happened. But before I get to that, is our motivation. And we always like to tell people this, that we believe cybersecurity is a duty for all businesses, that we've got to protect ourselves, our trading partners, the information of our employees, our clients, and that business continuity is number one goal for our economic well-being. So we must protect ourselves. And I think Tim will get into some of it about who we're protecting ourselves from. So here's our agenda today. I talked about our motivation. We have a cybersecurity culture here at CIS. And so I've covered that. And then I want to move on to the meat of what we're going to talk about. And that's an interview with Tim Riddle, CEO, where we go into some real life cyber attacks on small business and talk about those. So welcome, Tim.
thank you. Good to be here.
Okay, so the way we're going to do that is I'm going to go through kind of the phases and ask Tim some questions and have him react to those. Tim was intimately involved with sort of all the aspects of these hacks and the response, so he's the best person to talk about this. So I'll turn it over to you, Tim. What were the initial reactions, or talk about these, the hacks and what actually happened?
Okay, yeah, why don't I start off by giving just a little bit of background. I've picked a couple of different incidents that I think will be good representative case studies. One of them is a pretty small company. They've got about 20 employees, but only 6 or 7 of them actually work on the computers. This company used QuickBooks and for processing payments to vendors and customers, just running their business in general. And they woke up one day and they had an alert from QuickBooks from the fraud department. They thought they detected fraud, and they had. Someone had hacked into QuickBooks and attempted to send an ACH out for one vendor that they really owed the money to, but they had changed the bank account information on that and attempted to send the money out. And so $30,000 was about to go out the door. So of course they kind of panicked and started jumping all over it, and they went in and turned off all the ACH, and that reaction, of course, created a lot of problems for them. They had to, because it wasn't safe. But they had to figure out how to get people paid on their payroll, and it just disrupted the relationships with the vendors, and they didn't know what happened. And it turns out that someone had hacked into their email and used that to get in to learn that they had QuickBooks, and to change the password in QuickBooks, and then delete the emails that's used to control that process inside of QuickBooks, so nobody knew it happened. They felt good. They thought that they had stopped the problem. They got it changed back. They changed their passwords, and things seemed to settle down. About a month later, it happened again, and so they really started to panic more about how is this continuing to happen. And that's when they had stopped and asked CIS for help. We were referred in by their insurance agent. Another example that we're going to use today was a larger company. They've got somewhere in about the mid-50s as far as people that actually work on the computers all day long. And one day the accounting controller received an email from a vendor stating that an email they'd received from their system saying that there's a remittance advice for an ACH payment, and the vendor said they not only never received the cash, but the invoice that was on the remittance advice really wasn't from them. It was something wrong, and of course that set off alarm bells. And so The response inside of there was they immediately stopped the ACH, which there were thousands of ACH payments made in a month. And so it caused a major disruption of service to the vendors. The entire process of how to make payments changed. They had to go back to paper checks. They had to get the checks. They had to communicate to all the vendors, train the employees on how to spot the things that were wrong. It's a massive undertaking, and it was all just one day. Here you go. It's right in front of them. So of course they did an investigation, and they found a pattern, and we actually had helped them with that. But they found a pattern where they discovered over $500,000 had been spent going to bank accounts that were the wrong bank accounts. It was very expensive to perform the full investigation. The Secret Service got involved. That's what the arm of the federal government that deals with that type of crime. And over time, we determined that someone had penetrated the system in many ways. And we could tell they'd been in the system for a good 18 months. They get into multiple people's email accounts, learn their internal network passwords because they were putting them in emails. And someone had logged in the system for a long time and learned their company. During that process, the insurance company sent out their experts who tried to scan and monitor the system, and they came back and gave them a clean bill of health going forward. But months later, the attempted attack started all over again. They caught most of them, a couple of them got through, and that's when they asked CIS for help. So is that what you're looking for, Brian?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good story to start with. So we know how things happened, I guess, in general. But like when you were first approached, what was just talk about the CEOs and your conversations with them. I mean, were they reluctant? Were they astonished? Were they angry?
The first one in the small company, it had been going on for a couple of months, and he thought he had killed it, and it flared back up again. He was close to being in a panic mode, but he was just very concerned. He felt helpless. He tried to do everything he could to kick the people out, and they just kept getting back in. So he was concerned that he couldn't reliably run his company, and he just wanted help. The larger company, it was a much more detailed conversation. We had actually been working with that company on a different project that was unrelated to cybersecurity. So we knew a lot about their environment. We're implementing ERP systems for them. And he just came to me and said, everybody says it's okay when it's not. This cost me a lot of money. I need to believe that we have our controls in place. What do I do? He was just at his wit's end.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but $500,000 going out the door, that's a big number. That's going to get, I don't know how big the company is, that's going to get somebody's attention. And so they were really, I don't want to say desperate, but it was taking their focus away from running their company because they were being attacked.
Yeah, no. And even the $30,000, though it didn't go out, that's a lot for a small business as well, right?
Well, I certainly don't want to lose 30,000. If you don't think it's much, you just write me a check. I'll take it.
Okay, so once you get involved, obviously there's a time frame here because
right.
You can't dig in. I mean, there are a lot of things going on, but so what happens immediately? What do you recommend?
Right. Well, the first thing you need to do is stop the damage from occurring. Right. There's a lot of things that need to be done to make sure you're safe and they can't continue on, but you've got to do something to stop them from taking your money or otherwise damaging your systems. And so there's some very basic things we did immediately is change passwords, make sure they're using long, complex passwords. They're not sharing passwords. If they know how to do it, they need to immediately start multi-factor authentication on email access so that if people are already inside your system, they don't get back in again. And that helps slow it down. That's always a good thing to have anyway. If you don't have multi-factor authentication on key systems, that's just an automatic thing you should be doing. Where it pings you on your phone or some other device, and you have to have something, your login name and password, and something you have in your hands, your phone, or some other type of key fob device, depending on the style, so that a bad actor won't have both. We also trained just basically having conversations with key people. In this instance, the hack was all about trying to get in their accounting process and steal their money. So the key people we immediately trained on how to detect a phishing email, how not to click on things that you don't know, and just kind of emphasize what we think is really common sense. Just don't do that, and really show them some examples from their system of how people are using emails against them. In these instances, we also had them change the vendor master maintenance approval process. So we made it so that not one person can go in and change a remit to address if they're printing checks, or a bank account number if they're doing electronic transactions. So that if somebody wants to change, before you make it, you have to get on the phone with the vendor and independently verify this is the valid thing to do, and lock that piece down. And some of it, I think I'll probably cover a little bit later, but some of it is people hacking the system or making those changes for them. So, it takes all the pieces together. And so those are the things that didn't require a technical person to come in and analyze, what do I do right this second? Those were the things that fit these situations.
Yeah, I think that's the point. It's like, it's not just all about technical, right? It's like,
that's right.
You have to come in. I mean, this deeply disrupts your business, right? It's all
Like
about
you never
people.
expect. It's extremely expensive in both time and money. No doubt
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And we talk about the culture. I'll give you an example. We're a managed security service provider, so of course we're very hypersensitive to security issues. So, as an example, in my world, I was telling you earlier today that we use SharePoint to share files with vendors and customers and other business relationships. And I was sharing a spreadsheet I did to communicate some project status on a company that has offices in a lot of places. And one of their people was in Switzerland, which we don't normally have activity there. And so I shared it out, and I received the email back from him saying, yeah, I got it, I can see it. And within about 60 seconds, there was a person coming in from our IT department saying, is it okay that Mario from Switzerland got into your spreadsheet? And I was like, yes, it is. That's good. But the alert was there is the point. And it was because it was an unusual situation. And the security stack says, wait, this is unusual. We don't know it's bad. We're not blocking it, but you need to know it's happening so that you can block it if you need to.
Yeah. That's great.
That's the culture that you get to. And there's other things that we have as well, that we have a service that sends us fake phishing emails to see if our people are paying attention. And when it first starts out, some people weren't, and it got to be a contest of who's going to click on that bad email and get caught. Right? So they're all watching, or who can spot the email that's bad, right? And it got to be a contest, and it really drove home to everybody that you have to pay attention. You can't just go about your day and click on things. It gets you in trouble.
Right. Okay, so we talked about kind of the immediate reaction and what you do to get the people moving in the right direction. So let's talk a little bit about the technical process. So without getting too technical,
right?
But what happens once you dig in?
Well, from a business person's point of view, whenever you feel you want to validate and verify that you're secure. These two companies were doing it as a reactive measure. I prefer companies do this as a proactive measure before they get hacked, but it's still the same process. We do a full vulnerability assessment. And that's going to include multiple things, one of which we put our tools in there that scan every piece of their network, inside out scans and outside in scans for all IP addresses. We look at the security that is or is not in place inside of their email, because it's usually out in the cloud somewhere. Other cloud apps will have different things that we scan for. We also do a complete review of how their system is configured and administrated, and look at other firewalls. Do they have things separated so that if they do get hacked, somebody can't get to everything? They can only get to smaller amounts and limit the damage that can be done. The result of that process is both a report that says this is all the stuff that we found, plus a list of key steps that need to be taken to remediate either specific weaknesses that are found or just in general the layer of security stack that they need that they don't have. And the reports are sometimes pretty shocking. In this instance, the smaller company had, I forget the exact number, but it was in the upper hundreds of gaps and weaknesses. The larger company that had been hacked so bad had over 6,000 problems.
Oh my gosh.
Now, a lot of those can be fixed with some common sense things, keeping the patches up to date on Windows, because if you don't have your patches up to date, when they announce a new patch, they're telling the world, here's where the weakness is.
Right.
And so the hackers look at that and say, thank you. And they now know how, if they can find your machine, they now know how to hack it because you don't have the patch up to date that blocks that hack. And in the larger company, when we went through the remediation process, we found a number of things that were used to gain and regain access to the system. There was an application that is of known Chinese origination, and it is used by a lot of hackers, not necessarily the Chinese, but a lot of hackers to gain access. There was another piece where some application, and we wiped it, but some application was initiating a virtual machine that would set up a VPN coming into their system and then turn itself off and leave no trail. And when we updated their firewall and set the restrictions, it was then blocked. So it showed up that somebody was trying to do that. They actually had time bombs in the system that once we locked them out, it started disabling servers. And we had to go in and restore them in a safe LAN environment. So there was a lot of damage that was done that we had to untangle because they didn't prevent the attack in the first place. Good news is we've gotten them back to a good place. We put security stacks in place with all the full 24/7 managed SOC, the email protections, all those types of things.
Yeah, and I think that what I remember about it is that kind of surprised me. It didn't surprise me because I'd heard about it, but how persistent they are. That you're not just hacked one time, right?
Oh no, you get on the list. Once they've had success, that's not only the people that got you the first time, they then sell that to other people. It's for sale out on the dark web. You can find it all over the place.
Yeah.
We do dark web scans and we find people's credentials for sale, billions of them literally up for sale out there.
Okay, so and I think the other point from that I took away was things can get worse before they get better when you start stopping these people. And
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they laid landmines for us all over the place. And they started firing off the moment that their internal, the things they had put in there to reach out and reestablish a connection been broken were blocked, and it shut them down. It took us a full day to get the servers all restored and get that piece there, but and a lot of people probably would have just changed they made it look like it was a communication problem. So you just been changing all the communication settings through the firewall. So it looked like you caused a problem when you didn't. And they want you to undo it.
Right.
Right. So they keep getting in. They like that little cash flow that they had going.
Yeah. Open that firewall again. We got to open it again, right?
You close the firewall, your servers don't work, right? Yeah. No.
Okay, so the next kind of topic that I think is important to most business people is kind of the impact that it has, not only on your own company,
Right.
but the companies you deal with.
So in the smaller company, well, in both companies that I'm using as an example, the stress level inside of the company goes way up for a lot of people. The distraction factor of not being able to do the job in the normal way, of having to stop and communicate. Imagine that you walked in today and all of a sudden you've got a new project on your plate. You have to contact 750 vendors and explain to them they're not getting their ACH, and you're going to be a little late getting the check out because you get the process going. It's not a fun thing to happen, and it can damage the relationships. It's being open and honest and tell them what's going on is a very important thing, and working diligently to minimize the impact. But it is a lot of work, and the stress that hits your own employees, that process is significant. In the smaller company, everybody was worried, where's my paycheck? Right? They were writing checks. They were direct depositing everything, and now they couldn't. So they had to, they figured out their workarounds, and they finally got with the bank and were able to do it. But there was a weekly pay run, and it got disrupted right at the last minute. It caused problems. And again, they worked around it, but I can easily see how some companies get hacked. They're lucky they make it at all, depending on what happens. And this isn't even getting into ransomware, where they grab everything and shut it down. Right. This is a lot more subtle. And so there's a lot of different ways they could hurt you.
Yeah, I've seen this. Everybody thinks about ransomware, but
That is real. But
yeah,
the bigger damage is when they've hacked into your system. You don't know they're there, and they're looking around and laying in wait until they can figure out how they can take your money. And
right.
that's the piece that harms you a little at a time until you notice it, and then the fight begins.
Yeah, I mean, it's like ransomware. You feel like you have a hope of getting your stuff back, even if you have to pay for it. But or you have good systems in place to be able to restore things
That's
back
right.
quickly. But in this case, the money's gone, right?
That's right. That's right. I mean, in the one where they got over $500,000, the investigation is ongoing, but
Yeah.
the money's gone. Even if you find the person that did it, you're not going to find the money. And
Right.
it's entirely possible the person that did it is in a country where you can't go get them anyway. I mean, if it came from North Korea, what are you going to do? Send in the military? I don't think so.
Yeah, and I think we have a case study on the smaller company, but I really liked the reaction of the CEO, because he said that in the beginning he was a little embarrassed about it, but in the end he thought it was a great investment in his business that he wanted to tell everybody about.
That's right. That's right. And we'll get a case study on the other one. It's still ongoing. I mean, the disruption factor started in June, and we're just getting back to where they feel comfortable doing the ACH again in February.
Wow.
This disruption lasted a very long time.
Right. Okay, so you've alluded to this, but maybe you can kind of highlight this over again. Is what can you do to prevent this? Well,
at a high level, it's advanced planning. The don't just do a couple things and assume everything's okay. Most people don't really know what all of your security stacks should be. And there's a lot of information out on the internet. Some of it's good, some of it's not. But at a high level, you need advanced planning and to implement both cybersecurity as well as internal controls for your accounting process, so that if you do get hacked, you minimize the impact. But knowing that someone has penetrated your system early on is extremely important, and that's technology, and that's also user training. The single biggest thing you can do is train your users to not click when they shouldn't. That if an email, for example, if I receive emails that are not on my contact list, it goes to my junk. I'll look through them. If I know somebody, I'll add them to my list, but for the most part, I just delete it. It's just, you just assume that it's a bad email and you don't open it. But there's other ways to filter spam emails and all that type of thing. But at the front end level, you've got to train your people. At the technical level, you really need probably some professional help if you're not an IT person. And even some IT people aren't well versed in cybersecurity. It's very complex and it changes. Getting the right tools in place. It's always good to do an assessment, because then you have a clear guidance on what needs to happen, where your weaknesses are. Even if you have your own IT department, someone at an executive level should want to trust but verify. You have an independent third party come in, do an assessment, tell you where your weaknesses are, give you your target list, and your IT department can remediate it, or you can outsource remediation. But having an assessment is a very important part of the process if you have complex systems of all, even the simpler systems. There are things you need to put in place, and most smaller companies don't do it. They've just never done it. They don't think about it. And you have to take a proactive plan set of steps to really defend yourself.
Right. And I think the point, I'd like you to emphasize maybe a little bit is that a lot of people think that because they haven't seen the hack,
it doesn't mean it's not there.
But
Yeah,
the bigger company, it was in there for a while, right?
At least 18 months that we know of.
Right.
At least 18 months that we know of, and it was probably more than that. And they had a really poor cybersecurity culture. Everybody knew everybody else's passwords. They shared it via email. I mean, they just never assumed anybody would do anything to them, and they got taken advantage of. There's several sayings that come to mind. This one doing security the right way costs more upfront. But that ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. It's the amount of time, money, and stress in their life would have been worth doing any of the assessments and knowing where they were. And another one, after we had finished the vulnerability assessment, I was meeting with the CEO and giving him the results and discussing what next steps need to take. And he stopped and said, I learned a long time ago that there was nothing more expensive than a cheap lawyer. And now he's expanding that to say there's nothing more expensive than cheap approaches to cybersecurity. Yeah, of course, he really got hit hard. And we're under attack. There are state-backed actors. There are very professional, well-organized criminal organizations that they're good at what they do. They constantly work 24/7 trying to find a way in, and once they get in, they know what to do to hurt you. And it's another saying that resonates is the only thing necessary for evil to triumph in the world is that good people do nothing. And this is very, very true with cybersecurity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's to your point, it's like how sophisticated it is for these companies who want to get in, hide, and steal money, compared to the hype about ransomware is you're hit immediately, right? They hit you,
Right.
hit, and those
Well, even
kinds of.
sometimes with the ransomware piece,
Mhm.
they might have been in there for several months while they figured out how to get to everything, because they may hack a lower level person and then use that to find somebody with more credentials and figure out the entire network before they launch it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you still, no matter when you find out or how much damage they've done, knowing when they're getting in or something might be happening right now is extremely important to eliminating the damage that they're doing.
Right. That was awesome, man. So we've got some takeaways, but I think you probably can add to this list that hackers spend months inside. You likely already have backdoors to your systems, and like you said, trust but verify, right, Tim?
That's right. That's right. You can't know you're in a safe place unless you go through a very methodical process to prove it.
Right. Hey, one question occurred to me. Has the cyber insurance had an effect on these companies to help them?
Yes and no. You want cyber insurance just because the risk is high. The cyber insurance companies are limiting what they will actually cover. Some of them refuse coverage, or some of them take your coverage, but just refuse claims if you don't have the right things in place. And they have questionnaires. And I think that's driving awareness, and that's driving people to do more. But, some people will just answer the way they think they should answer instead of the way things really are. And they're not really helping themselves. They're wasting their money on insurance. But I do think it drives more awareness.
Awesome.
I have
Okay,
a
so
quick question.
Peter, you're always good with questions.
I do. I had a quick question about cyber insurance. Are more and more cyber insurance companies requiring that that businesses have like a provider to make sure that
Well, they don't necessarily require how you get the tools that you need, just that you have them and they're being managed properly. Most companies don't have sufficient skill sets to do it for themselves. Some do, but the cyber insurance companies are most definitely getting smarter because they've been getting hammered, and they're getting a lot tougher on who they're going to give insurance to and which claims that they're going to cover. I mean, they're going to go in and investigate. And if you told them you had a full managed SOC in place and you don't, guess what? Nothing's covered. And your premiums are not refunded. So you're just wasting your money if you don't do it right.
Ouch.
So have any other questions from anybody? Type them in the chat, raise your hand.
I didn't see any questions coming in, but I'm good for questions always. I am always good for questions. So we've talked to a couple companies as well that have gone through something like this. And it's always panic inducing. Like I would hate to be a CEO or anybody at the company to get that notification or that call.
Oh yeah, you get this sinking feeling of, oh no. How bad is bad, right? Because
how bad is bad?
it's just not the direct hit to your bank statement, which can happen, but it's also the direct hit to your relationships with your customers and vendors. It's a big deal.
Yeah. How, well, the one question is, I think a lot of companies, if they don't have a process in place, the question is, okay, oh crap, this just happened. Who do I call first?
That's right. That's right. Well, and the challenge with answering that comes down to there's multiple avenues of consideration, right? The technical side is important, and you need someone that has some technical understanding, but you need someone that has business understanding as well. If you are talking to somebody that is just a systems engineer, you're going to get a systems engineer answer. If you talk to someone that has no IT background, you're going to get a business answer and probably won't won't be able to manage the technical side. So you really have to have both.
Right.
And so people will a lot of times look to their CPA firm for some of the business side. Some CPAs are good, some aren't. You never know what you're getting into. They might be good at taxes, but they don't know anything about systems, right?
Mhm.
And very few MSPs really have that business background to go with it. And it's really that combination that is what you need to be able to fully address all the issues.
Mhm.
So Tim, real quick, we've danced around the whole assessment thing.
Uh-huh.
And explain that a little more, maybe what's the scope? How long does it take?
But it's the answer is a little dependent. I can give you some details, but it depends on how complex your environment is. You know, if you're a single site with one server or even no servers, it's fairly straightforward and can be done depending on your schedule in a week, maybe two. Just not clock time, but calendar time. A larger company with a lot of sites, it gets just complex on the scheduling process of who's going to be where and what. I've seen the longer ones take 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I've seen a really big one that took several months because they're scattered absolutely everywhere, and you've got so many people to organize. But typically, companies that are a single location, they've got 50-ish employees or less, you're talking about a week or two for most of it. There are some pieces we run tests a little longer, and so you have some trailing things coming in.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess we're out of time, but if anybody would like to know more about us, how we do the assessments, any more details about, the stories that we've been telling here, feel free to contact me. And again, Tim, thanks, man. That was really.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Thank you.
Peter?
Right. Well, thank you. Yes, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Brian, as always, for bringing just a ton of helpful information on IT and cybersecurity and what businesses need to do and be aware of to keep themselves and their businesses secure. So I will put, Brian, your email here in the chat. I'll go ahead and stop the recording, but again, thanks for everyone who took the time to join us today, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks when we do this all again.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.